As I mentioned before, I really love our gospel reading today from Luke chapter 13. And I love it because of the picture it paints of Jesus. It's just so clear that Jesus is about life. Jesus is about drawing life out of people. And I love the snapshot our gospel reading today gives us of that. And as we've just heard in our reading, Jesus is at the synagogue. He's about to speak. There's a large crowd there. He sees this woman who's bent over, and he goes over to her and he heals her. He heals her from this spirit that has been crippling her, we're told, for the past 18 years. And we're not told exactly what the nature of that spirit was. We don't know. Was it some sort of osteoporosis? Was it a genetic condition? Did she have an injury? Had she hurt herself? Or was it something completely beyond human understanding? We don't really know. We're not given that detail. We're just told that this spirit is responsible for her condition. I was reading a reflection this week by a man named Brett Blair, and he suggested, I really found this helpful, he suggested that in this reading there are two main spirits evident. Two main spirits evident, and I found his thoughts and insights really helpful, so I wanted to share some of those with you this morning, and in particular these two spirits that are evident in our reading today. So firstly in the text we see at work a crippling spirit. We see a crippling spirit at work. Because of this woman's condition, she's bent over. She's literally facing down. So think what she would have missed out on in life. As she went about her daily life, face down to the floor, she would have missed out on just seeing the sky the way we do, seeing the sun, seeing the birds in the trees, the wind rustling through the leaves. She would have missed out on that. She would have missed out on normal social interaction. As she spoke with people, she wouldn't have been able to look them in the face, in the eyes. She would have literally been down on a lower level to everyone else, so her social interactions wouldn't have been normal. I think her spiritual interactions probably weren't normal either, in the sense that in that day and in that time when people suffered from infirmities like she was, very often people thought, well, God must be punishing her, that person, because of their condition. So she would have been regarded probably as not in God's favour, so she's pushed to the side there. There would have been difficulties financially for her as well, because her condition would have made it difficult for her to work like everyone else, and there was no social security net like we have today, so she would have been reliant on the generosity of others to help her through everyday life. And then we also know that when people suffer from chronic health conditions, whatever it might be, it's very normal to start to feel quite depressed, to feel isolated, to feel alone, as though life is not worth it. So this lady's condition would have meant that her life was hard. It would have been really tough, really difficult. Which is probably what makes the response and the attitude of the synagogue ruler just so disturbing. It just seems so callous. The fact that he is not joyous at what's happened, he's upset. He seems angry, and he doesn't really care about her. He's just upset that this rule has been broken. Jesus has healed someone on the Sabbath. Now, to be fair to him, he was right, technically, because it was the Sabbath, and you weren't meant to do any work on the Sabbath, and healing was work. And so he pulls Jesus up on it. He had the rules on his side, but Jesus had a greater principle on his side, and that was the principle of compassion. Compassion trumps rules. I think that's one of the takeaways from our reading today. Compassion trumps rules. I think part of what's happening in this passage is that Jesus is warning that rules, regulations, and institutions can stop us from reaching the heights of compassion that we're actually called to reach as followers of Jesus. Remember, Jesus is the one who boiled down all 635 religious rules for living to two. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. Love God, love your neighbour as yourself. And so in his interaction with this woman, Jesus goes out of his way to publicly demonstrate that people are more important than rules. People are more important than rules. I mean, think about it. This is not an urgent healing that's needed here. This woman is not struggling to breathe or about to die and Jesus heals her. No, she's been in this situation for 18 years. So really, one more day, surely that wouldn't have mattered. Jesus could have waited and then healed her the next day. She would have still got her healing and the religious rulers wouldn't have been upset. But he doesn't. He quite deliberately, it would seem, breaks the rules to make a point. And here's the thing, I think as church people, I'm talking to myself here, but as church people, I think we need to be reminded from time to time that people are more important than rules. People are more important than maybe the framework that we have for the way we think and interact with the rules, maybe our theological rules, our theological understandings. People are more important than all of those. See, this bent over, crippled woman is not seen as important by that religious leader and presumably the others around him, the other leaders around him. As I mentioned before, they probably thought, well, look, it's probably her fault she's in that situation. God is probably punishing her, which is why she's bent over like that. She's not particularly important. She's not a mover or shaker in society. She's just a bent over, crippled woman pushed to the margins. It's easy for that to happen, isn't it? It's easy for people to get pushed to the margins. It still happens today. I mean, what about when we walk through the streets of Fremantle as we go out those doors and we see people who are maybe homeless or struggling sitting on the street? It's very easy to just walk past and to make a whole heap of assumptions about them as people based on maybe the way they appear, based on maybe their behaviour, based on maybe their addictions, whatever it might be. But we make a whole heap of assumptions about those people, and very often they're not great ones. We think, oh, it must be their fault, they're in that situation. And we make value judgments, and they're not good value judgments. They actually place them on a place that's lower than we are. We're higher up and they're down here. It's very easy for that to happen. And all those judgments that we make actually devalue other people. That's what the synagogue leader does. He devalues this woman. She's not important. Jesus makes the point that no, that's not how I think. In Jesus' economy, in Jesus' mind, this woman is very, very important. Now, this woman may have been bent over. She may have had a bent, twisted back. But the synagogue ruler, this religious leader, he'd actually had a bent, crumpled soul. His humanity had become bent and crumpled. There's nothing quite like legalism and judgmentalism to choke the heart and soul out of our walk with God and to choke the life out of other people as well. It's a crippling spirit, and I think we're being warned against that crippling spirit in our text this morning. So that's the first spirit we see at work, a crippling spirit. But there's another spirit evident in this text as well, and it's a good one. It's a spirit of joy. There's a spirit of joy evident in this text. Jesus heals this frail, bent-over woman, and she is beside herself with joy. It's amazing. He takes the initiative. She doesn't go to him. He actually goes to her and brings life and life to the full to this woman, restoration to her in so many areas. And so we can just imagine her joy. And I'm sure it wasn't just her. I reckon pretty much everyone else, except maybe the religious leaders in that synagogue, were filled with that same wonder, amazement and joy. I'm sure they wanted to shout with joy, to shout with exhilaration, but the religious leaders shut it down, and that's sad. You know, sometimes I think you just have to express joy as we thank God for a healing maybe because of something that God has done in your life. Sometimes we just need to express our joy and our gratitude to God. And I think we should be looking for things to thank God for, reasons to express gratitude and joy to God. We should be looking for those things in our lives. Let's not be so buttoned up and religious that we lose the joy of what God has done in our lives and in the lives of people around us. And let's not be so weighed down by rules, regulations, or the right thing that we overlook people around us. Personally, for me, I think if our religiosity, if our religion, if the way we think about God causes us to exclude other people and to dismiss other people, then we need to have a good hard think about where we've landed and how we got to that place. When Jesus looked at that woman, he saw someone made in the image of God. That's why he referred to her as a daughter of Abraham. He was making the point, this is a daughter of Abraham. She is a child of God. And because of that, she is worthwhile. And we're called to have the same attitude towards the people that we come across as well. I remember reading the point that in ancient times, kings used to place statues of themselves all around their kingdom. So these statues might have been made of wood or stone or metal. And when people walked past those statues, they were meant to give deference and honour to those statues. And to dishonour or deface or defile one of those statues in any way was to actually dishonour the king. It wasn't a good thing at all. In the Bible we read that God has done something similar. He has placed little statues of himself all around his kingdom, all around the world. Only those statues aren't made of stone, wood or metal. They're made of flesh and blood. It's the people around us that bear the image of God, and the way we respond to them is a direct reflection, I think, of our relationship with God. It's an act of worship with the way we treat other people and treat them with the dignity and respect they deserve as children of God. And when we do that, when we respond to people the way Jesus responded to people, it's obviously good for them, but it's good for us too. It kind of straightens us up. It stops us being bent over and inward looking and crumpled. When we open ourselves to other people, it somehow in a mysterious way opens us to God. It's good for us as well. It opens us up. So there are spirits at work in our world, just like there are in this passage. And I think one of the challenges, or the big challenge for us this morning, is to ask the question, what spirit is it that's at work in us as followers of Jesus? What spirit is at work in us? Is it a spirit of legalism, or a spirit that kind of judges other people and chokes the life out of them and ultimately us? Or is it a spirit of joy, a spirit of life, a spirit of love? And whichever spirit it is that operates in our lives will make a huge difference to us and to the people around us. So I think there's a real challenge for us this morning to, as followers of Jesus, to embrace his way with the way we interact with and relate to other people, knowing that it's good for them, but equally good for us as it opens us up, straightens us up, helps us to become the people God created us to be. Just going to leave a moment's silence now for you to hear what God might be saying to you by his Spirit, and then I'll pray. So just some silence.